photos of sunsets from her office window, funny articles she thought he'd enjoy, questions about Jalen's school projects. Marcus responded with pictures of Jalen's artwork, updates on their evening adventures, occasionally a photo of something beautiful he'd noticed during his night shifts. They were building something fragile and precious, though neither dared to name it. Then came the night that changed everything. The fourth Sunday of their friendship, Victoria didn't show up for their usual breakfast. No text, no call, no explanation. Marcus told himself it was fine. He'd been foolish to expect their unusual friendship to continue indefinitely. People like Victoria Sinclair move through life collecting and discarding connections like accessories. Eventually, the novelty of befriending a janitor wore off, and reality reasserted itself. He made dinosaur toast for Jalen alone. Took him to the park alone. When her eyes found his, her pupils were completely different sizes. One dilated wide, the other constricted to a pinpoint. "Marcus," her voice was thin, confused. Why are you here?" "I work here, remember? I'm the janitor." He grabbed her trembling hand, checking her pulse. Elevated, erratic. "Victoria, what's happening? How long have you been like this?" I don't know. Hours, maybe? I was working, and then—" She trailed off, her eyes losing focus for a moment before snapping back. "I need to finish these reports. The board meeting is tomorrow." "Forget the reports. I'm calling 911. Victoria's good hand shot out and grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "No." The word came out sharp, desperate. "Please, Marcus, no. If the board finds out I'm having more episodes, they'll vote me out. Richard Crane has been waiting for exactly this kind of excuse. One more sign of medical weakness and he'll have the votes to remove me." Marcus stared at her. "Victoria, you could be having another stroke. Your pupils are uneven. You're trembling. This is serious." "I know it's serious, but so is losing my company to a man who tried to have me killed." Tears welled in her eyes. The first time Marcus had ever seen her cry. "Please, Marcus, help me another way. Take me to a hospital yourself, quietly. No ambulance, no sirens, no corporate notification." Every medical instinct screamed at him to override her objections, to call 911 and let the professionals handle it. Denise would have called 911. Denise would have prioritized the patient's health over the patient's preferences. But Denise had also taught him something else. Treat the whole person, not just the symptoms. Understand their fears. Work with them, not against them. Victoria was caught between her health and her career, between survival and the empire she'd spent decades building. If Marcus forced the issue, she might never trust him again. "Okay," he said finally. "Can you walk?" "I think so, with help." He pulled her to her feet, wrapping her arm around his shoulders. She leaned into him heavily, her body smaller and frailer than he expected. "My car's in the garage," she said. "Level 3, the black Mercedes." "Keys?" "Desk drawer, top right." Marcus grabbed the keys and helped Victoria to the elevator. At 2:30 a.m., the building was deserted. No witnesses to see the CEO of Sinclair Industries being half-carried through the lobby by the night janitor. The drive to the hospital was tense. Victoria sat in the passenger seat, her trembling hand gripping the armrest, while Marcus navigated the empty Manhattan streets. Neither of them spoke. At the emergency room, Marcus avoided the main entrance. He'd been here before, during Denise's time. He knew which doors the staff used, which hallways led to the neurology wing. "I need to see Dr. Keisha Williams," he told the night nurse. "Tell her Marcus Thompson is here with a patient showing neurological symptoms. Tell her it's urgent and it needs to be quiet." The nurse looked skeptical, but something in Marcus's expression must have convinced her. She picked up the phone. 10 minutes later, Dr. Williams appeared. A tall black woman with silver-streaked hair and the kind of calm competence that came from decades of medical practice. "Marcus Thompson," she said, her eyes widening slightly. "It's been 2 years. I was starting to think you'd forgotten about us." "I could never forget Harlem Hospital, Dr. Williams. You were Denise's family." Dr. Williams's expression softened. "She was the best stroke specialist I ever trained. We still use her protocols." She turned to Victoria, her professional assessment kicking in. "And who do we have here?" "Victoria Sinclair. She had a stroke 3 weeks ago. Tonight she's presenting with new symptoms: tremor, uneven pupils, confusion. She needs a full workup, but she needs it quiet. No records that could be accessed by corporate lawyers." Dr. Williams raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. That was one thing Marcus had always appreciated about her. She understood that sometimes patients needed protection as much as treatment. "Bring her to exam room 4. I'll order the scans personally." The tests took 3 hours. CT scan, MRI, blood work, neurological assessment. Marcus sat in the waiting room, drinking bad coffee and watching the clock. At 6 a.m., Dr. Williams emerged with an expression that made his stomach drop. "Marcus, we need to talk." She led him to a private consultation room where Victoria already sat, looking small and scared in a hospital gown. "The results are concerning," Dr. Williams said, pulling up brain scans on the wall monitor. "See these areas here? These are lesions, evidence of multiple small strokes over the past several months." "Mini strokes," Marcus said. TIAS. "Exactly. Transient ischemic attacks. They often go undetected, but they're warning signs of a major event coming. The stroke Ms. Sinclair had 3 weeks ago shouldn't have been a surprise. There should have been months of documented warning signs." Victoria's voice was tight. "My doctor said my scans were clean. Dr. Harrison. He showed me the results himself." Dr. Williams pulled up a different file. "These are the records from your previous physician. I had my team access them through the hospital network." She pointed to a series of brain images. "According to these official results, your brain shows no abnormalities. But look," she overlaid the new scans with the old ones. The difference was obvious even to a non-medical eye. The old scans showed a clean, healthy brain. The new scans showed damage, small but unmistakable areas of tissue death scattered throughout. "These results don't match," Dr. Williams said. "Either your brain spontaneously developed extensive damage in the last 3 weeks, which is medically impossible, or someone altered the original records," Marcus finished. Victoria's face had gone pale. "Harrison. He falsified my results." "It would appear so." Dr. Williams's voice was carefully neutral, but Marcus could hear the anger beneath the professional calm. "Ms. Sinclair, I don't know what's going on here, but I know medical fraud when I see it. Someone has been systematically covering up your neurological deterioration. The question is why?" Marcus and Victoria exchanged a look. The conspiracy theory wasn't a theory anymore. "I know why," Victoria said quietly. "And I know who." She began to explain. Richard Crane, the power struggle, the $400,000 in consulting fees. Dr. Williams listened with growing alarm. "This is criminal," she said when Victoria finished. "Not just unethical, criminal. Medical fraud with intent to harm. You need to go to the authorities." "I will, but I need more evidence first. Crane is smart. He'll have covered his tracks. If I make accusations I can't prove, he'll use my medical episodes against me, claim I'm paranoid, unstable, unfit for leadership." Dr. Williams nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Documentation. Everything you found tonight. Copies of the scans, the blood work, the comparison analysis. Something I can use when the time comes." "You'll have it." Dr. Williams turned to Marcus. "And you? What's your role in all this?" Marcus thought about the question. What was his role? He was a janitor, a single father, a nobody who'd stumbled into something much bigger than himself. "I'm just trying to help," he said finally. "That's all I've ever been trying to do." Dr. Williams studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, a sad, knowing smile that reminded Marcus painfully of Denise. "She would be proud of you, Marcus. Denise, she always said you had the heart of a healer, even without the training." "She said a lot of things," Marcus replied quietly. "I'm just trying to live up to them." The drive back to Victoria's apartment was silent. She'd been given medication to stabilize her symptoms, along with strict instructions to rest and avoid stress, advice that was almost laughable given the circumstances. "Thank you," she said as Marcus pulled up to her building. "Again, for everything." "You need to be careful, Victoria. Whatever's happening, it's escalating. The symptoms tonight were worse than before." "I know, but I can't stop now. If I show weakness, Crane wins. If I step back, everything I've built falls into his hands." She paused, her hand on the door handle. "I need your help, Marcus. Not just tonight, going forward. I need someone watching my back who doesn't have an angle to play. I'm a janitor. I push a cleaning cart for a living. You're the most honest person I know." Victoria turned to face him, her expression fierce despite her exhaustion. "Everyone else in my life wants something from me. Money, access, influence. You just want to help. That's rare. That's valuable. That's exactly what I need." Marcus thought about Jalen, asleep at home with Mrs. Patterson. Thought about his safe, predictable routine. Thought about everything he could lose if he got pulled deeper into Victoria's world. Then he thought about Denise, about her voice, her values, her unshakable belief that helping others was never optional. "Okay," he said. "Tell me what you need." The evidence arrived 3 days later in a manila envelope that Marcus found tucked under his apartment door. Dr. Williams had been thorough. Medical records spanning 18 months. Brain scans with timestamps. Laboratory reports showing Victoria's actual blood work alongside the falsified versions that Dr. Harrison had filed. A detailed analysis written in clinical language that even a jury could understand. Marcus spread the documents across his kitchen table, the same table where Denise had once taught him to read medical charts. The scope of the fraud made his hand shake. Harrison hadn't just missed Victoria's symptoms. He'd actively concealed them. Every elevated reading had been adjusted downward. Every warning sign had been explained away. Every opportunity for early intervention had been deliberately sabotaged. His phone buzzed. Victoria. "Did you get the package?" "I'm looking at it now. This is worse than we thought." "I know. I've been going through my own records. The financial trail is even more damning than the medical one." Marcus heard something in her voice. Fear, yes, but also something else. Determination. The CEO was coming back online. "What did you find?" "Crane's been planning this for at least 2 years. The payments to Harrison started 6 months before my first symptoms appeared. He wasn't just covering up my decline, he was engineering it." "Engineering it how?" Victoria paused. When she spoke again, her voice was tight with controlled rage. "My supplements, the vitamins I take every morning. Harrison prescribed them. Custom formulation, he said, tailored to my specific needs." Marcus's blood ran cold. "You think he was poisoning you?" "I had the pills analyzed by an independent lab. They contain trace amounts of compounds that interact badly with my existing medications. Nothing that would kill me outright, but enough to accelerate vascular problems over time. Enough to make a stroke almost inevitable." Marcus sat down heavily. The cruelty of it was almost incomprehensible. A doctor, someone who had sworn to do no harm, slowly poisoning his patient for money. "We need to go to the police." "Not yet." Victoria's voice was firm. "We have evidence of what they did, but we don't have evidence that will stick in court. Harrison will claim the supplements were a mistake. Crane will hide behind his corporate lawyers. We need them to make a move. We need them to incriminate themselves." "How?" "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." She was right. He didn't like it. Victoria's plan was simple in concept and terrifying in execution. She would let word leak that she was planning to announce her retirement at the next board meeting, citing health concerns. This would force Crane to accelerate his timeline. If he thought Victoria was about to step down voluntarily, he'd move to ensure his succession was guaranteed, which meant he'd have to communicate with Harrison, probably to discuss eliminating any evidence of their conspiracy. "You're using yourself as bait," Marcus said when she finished explaining. "I'm using the situation to our advantage. Crane thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'm dying." "Let him believe it. And if he decides to speed things up? If he tells Harrison to increase the dosage? You could actually die, Victoria. That's why I need you watching my back." They met the next evening at Victoria's penthouse. Marcus had never seen where she lived. Hadn't wanted to, honestly. The gap between their worlds was wide enough without visual confirmation. But Victoria had insisted. She needed help setting up the recording equipment her security consultant had provided. Hidden cameras, audio bugs, devices that would capture everything that happened in her home office. "The board meeting is in 5 days, she said, as Marcus helped her position a tiny camera behind a bookshelf. "I'll make some calls tomorrow. Let a few things slip to people I know will talk. By Thursday, Crane will have heard that I'm stepping down. And then? And then we wait for him to panic." Marcus stepped back, examining their work. The camera was invisible, unless you knew exactly where to look. "Victoria, I need to ask you something." "Go ahead." "Why me?" He turned to face her. "You have security consultants, lawyers, investigators, people who do this for a living. Why am I here installing spy cameras in your apartment?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. She walked to the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline that Marcus had only ever seen from 40 floors below. "Because you're the only person who's seen me," she said finally. "Not the CEO, not the brand, not the power or the money. Just me, the scared woman in the conference room who couldn't feel her own arm." She turned back to him. In the dim light, she looked older, more human. "Everyone else in my life wants something from Victoria Sinclair, the corporate entity. You just wanted to help Victoria, the person. That's why I trust you. That's why you're here." Marcus didn't know how to respond to that, so he just nodded and went back to work. The next 4 days were the longest of Marcus's life. He worked his night shifts as usual, pushing his cart through the same hallways, maintaining his cover. But every moment his mind was on Victoria, on Crane, on the conspiracy that was about to come crashing down, one way or another. Victoria texted him updates throughout the days. The rumors were spreading. Crane had been seen making phone calls with unusual urgency. Dr. Harrison had requested an emergency appointment to discuss Victoria's treatment plan. On Thursday night, Marcus's phone buzzed with 2 words. "It's happening." He was at Sinclair Tower, halfway through his shift. He abandoned his cart without a second thought and ran for the service elevator. Victoria had given him access to the building's security feed. From a maintenance closet on the 30th floor, he could watch everything happening in her penthouse across town. He pulled out his phone, connected to the hidden cameras, and held his breath. Victoria sat at her desk, looking calm despite what was coming. The doorbell rang. She rose to answer it. Richard Crane stood in the hallway. Behind him, Dr. Harrison clutched a medical bag with white-knuckled fingers. "Victoria," Crane said smoothly, "thank you for seeing us on such short notice. We heard about your retirement announcement and wanted to discuss the transition." "Of course. Come in." Marcus watched the three of them settle in Victoria's home office. Crane took the chair across from her desk, claiming the power position, Marcus noted. Harrison hovered near the door like he wanted to bolt. "So," Crane began, "the board was surprised to hear about your decision. We all thought you'd fight to stay until the bitter end." "The bitter end seems to be approaching faster than I'd like." Victoria's voice was steady. "My health has been declining. Another episode last week. The doctors say I need to prioritize rest." Dr. Harrison mentioned that. Crane glanced at the nervous physician. "He says you've been non-compliant with your treatment plan." "Have I? I take every pill he prescribes." Something flickered in Harrison's eyes. Fear. "Perhaps we should discuss adjusting your medications," Harrison said quickly. "Given the circumstances." "Adjusting them how?" Harrison glanced at Crane, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "I'd like to increase the dosage of your cardiovascular supplements. Given your recent episodes, a more aggressive approach might be warranted." Marcus's hands tightened on his phone. There it was, caught on camera. Harrison suggesting an increase in the very supplements that were poisoning her. But Victoria wasn't done. "Before we discuss medications, Richard, I want to talk about the succession plan. You're the obvious choice to replace me, of course. But there are concerns about certain financial irregularities." Crane's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "What kind of irregularities?" "Payments to shell companies. Consulting fees that don't seem to correspond to any actual consulting. The forensic accountants are still untangling it all, but the preliminary findings are troubling." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Victoria," Crane said slowly, "I hope you're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting." "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you that I know. About Meridian Holdings. About the $400,000. About all of it." Harrison made a small sound of distress. Crane silenced him with a look. "You're confused," Crane said. His voice had lost its smoothness. "Your medical condition is affecting your judgment. Perhaps you should lie down." "My medical condition was engineered by the man standing behind you." Victoria's composure finally cracked, anger bleeding through. "Did you think I wouldn't figure it out? That I'd just quietly die and you'd waltz into my position with clean hands?" Crane stood abruptly. "This is paranoid delusion. Harrison, we should call for psychiatric evaluation." "Call whoever you want." Victoria pulled out her phone. "But you should know that this conversation is being recorded. Audio and video. Every word you've said is now evidence." The blood drained from Crane's face. "And in about 3 minutes," Victoria continued, "FBI agents will be arriving to place both of you under arrest. I've been working with federal investigators for the past week. They have the financial records, the medical evidence, and now they have you on camera suggesting that Harrison increased the poison he's been feeding me." Harrison broke first. He stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp, his face contorted with terror. "I want a lawyer. I want a lawyer right now. I didn't. Richard said no one would get hurt. He said it would look natural." He said, "Shut up," Crane roared. "Shut your mouth." But Harrison was beyond listening. 2 years of guilt and fear came pouring out in a desperate flood of confession. "The supplements were his idea. He gave me the formula. Said it would just slow you down, make you step back from the company. I didn't know it would. I didn't mean for you to—" "You didn't mean for me to what?" Victoria's voice was ice. "Die? Have a stroke? Lose the ability to walk or talk or feed myself?" Harrison collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Crane remained standing, his face cycling through calculations even now. "This won't hold up in court," he said. "Recordings made without consent. Entrapment. My lawyers will tear this apart." "Your lawyers can try," Victoria smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. "But the FBI has been building this case for months. I'm not their only source. I'm just the one who survived long enough to help them finish it." The doorbell rang again. "That would be them now," Victoria said. Marcus watched on his phone as two agents entered the penthouse. Watched as Crane was handcuffed, his smooth confidence finally shattering into desperate protests. Watched as Harrison was let out still sobbing, still trying to explain that he hadn't meant for things to go so far. And through it all, Victoria stood steady. The woman who had trembled and gasped in a dark conference room 3 months ago now watched her would-be murderers be taken away in restraints. She looked directly at one of the hidden cameras, directly at Marcus, though she couldn't see him, and nodded once. It was over. Except it wasn't over. Not really. The story broke the next morning, and Marcus's world exploded. Someone had leaked to the press. By 8 a.m., every news outlet in America was running some version of the headline, "Black Janitor's Medical Knowledge Exposes Murder Conspiracy." Marcus's name was everywhere. His face, pulled from his employee ID, stared out from television screens and newspaper front pages. Reporters descended on his Bronx apartment building like locusts. Mrs. Patterson called, frantic. "Marcus, there are news vans on the street. They're asking about you. What's happening?" "Keep Jalen inside. Don't talk to anyone. I'm coming home." He fought through the crowd of journalists, shouting questions. Cameras flashed in his face. Microphones were shoved toward him. "Mr. Thompson, is it true you diagnosed a stroke that trained physicians missed?" "Mr. Thompson, how does it feel to be a hero?" "Mr. Thompson, do you have a comment on the arrests?" He said nothing, just pushed through to his building, up the stairs, into the safety of his apartment. Jalen ran to him the moment he walked through the door. "Gaddy, why are all those people outside? Mrs. Patterson said I couldn't go to school today." Marcus scooped up his son and held him tight. "It's complicated, buddy. Daddy helped someone important, and now a lot of people want to talk about it." "Are you in trouble?" "No, baby, no trouble. Everything's going to be okay." But even as he said it, Marcus knew his life would never be the same. The FBI wanted to interview him. Formally, this time. Agent Patricia Rodriguez, the lead investigator on the case, arrived at his apartment that afternoon. "Mr. Thompson, your testimony is crucial to this prosecution. You were the first person to identify Miss Sinclair's symptoms. You helped gather the evidence that led to these arrests. The U.S. Attorney wants you as a witness." "I was just trying to help. I'm not looking for attention." "I understand, but the public narrative matters in cases like this. 2 powerful men tried to murder a woman by manipulating her health care. A working-class janitor with no medical training spotted what board-certified physicians deliberately missed. That story resonates. That story makes people pay attention." Marcus thought about Jalen, about the reporters outside, about the life he'd carefully constructed to protect his son. What if I don't want to be part of the story? Agent Rodriguez's expression softened. "That's your choice. But can I tell you something off the record?" "Go ahead." This case isn't just about Victoria Sinclair. Corporate medical fraud is more common than anyone wants to admit. Executives pressured into working through obvious symptoms because their health is bad for stock prices. Doctors on retainer who look the other way. People dying quietly because no one wants to acknowledge they're sick. She leaned forward. "Your story could change that. A janitor who cared enough to push open a door, who knew enough to recognize what he was seeing, who had the courage to help even when it wasn't his job. That's a story that could save lives, Mr. Thompson. Not just one life, many lives. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. My wife was a stroke specialist, he said finally. She spent 15 years teaching people how to recognize the signs, how to respond, how to help. I know. I read about her. She sounds like an extraordinary woman. She believed that medical knowledge shouldn't belong just to doctors, that everyone should know the basics. That's why she taught me. Marcus looked toward Jalen's room, where his son was playing, blissfully unaware of how much his world was about to change. She would have wanted me to share that knowledge, even if it meant losing my privacy. So you'll testify? Marcus took a deep breath. I'll testify. The trial took 3 months. Marcus appeared before a federal grand jury, then at the preliminary hearings, then at the trial itself. Each time, he told the same story. The conference room, the symptoms, the decision to push open a door that protocol said he should have walked past. The defense attorneys tried to discredit him, called him an untrained amateur, suggested he'd been coached by Victoria's lawyers, implied that a black janitor couldn't possibly have the medical knowledge he claimed. Marcus stayed calm through all of it. Denise had taught him patience along with everything else. Mr. Thompson, the defense attorney sneered during cross-examination, you expect this jury to believe that you, a high school graduate who cleans toilets for a living, diagnosed a stroke more accurately than a board-certified physician? I expect this jury to believe what the evidence shows, Marcus replied. That Dr. Harrison's own records were falsified. That Victoria Sinclair's symptoms were textbook stroke presentation. That my wife spent 15 years teaching me to recognize those symptoms because she believed everyone deserved that knowledge. Your wife isn't here to corroborate your claims. Marcus felt the old grief surge up, but he pushed it down, controlled it, used it. No, she isn't. She died 2 years ago, driving home from a shift where she saved 3 people's lives. But everything she taught me is documented. Her training protocols are still used at Harlem Hospital. Her colleagues will testify to exactly what she believed about medical education. He looked directly at the jury. 12 ordinary people. Working people. People who understood what it meant to be invisible. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a hero. I'm a father who works nights to support his son. But I know what I saw that night, and I know what I did. I pushed open a door, and I helped someone who needed help. That's all. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Richard Crane was found guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, healthcare fraud, attempted homicide. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison. Dr. Harrison, who had cooperated with prosecutors after his breakdown, received 15 years. His medical license was permanently revoked. The verdict came down on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was home with Jalen when Victoria called. "We won," she said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "It's over. We won." "How do you feel?" "I don't know. Relieved? Exhausted? Grateful?" She paused. "Marcus, I don't know how to thank you. For everything." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. You saved my life. Not just once, twice. First in that conference room, and then again when you helped me fight back. Without you..." "Without me, you would have found another way. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Victoria." She laughed softly. "I don't feel strong. I feel like I've been holding myself together with tape and stubbornness. And now that it's over, I'm falling apart." Then fall apart. You've earned it." They were quiet for a moment. The silence was comfortable. Easy. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "The board is restructuring. New policies. Independent medical oversight. The things that should have been in place all along." Victoria's voice shifted, became more uncertain. "And I've been thinking about my own future. About what I want. About who I want in my life." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. He knew where this was heading. Had known, maybe, since the first Sunday she'd appeared at his door with sunflowers. "Victoria, I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. "I know the media attention has been hard on you, hard on Jalen. The last thing I want is to make your life more complicated. You've already made my life more complicated, in good ways and hard ways both. I know, and I'm sorry for the hard parts." Marcus looked at Jalen, who was building a Lego dinosaur at the kitchen table. His son glanced up, caught his eye, and smiled. "Don't be sorry," Marcus said. "Just give me time." "All the time you need," Victoria replied. "I'm not going anywhere." Time, as it turned out, was harder to come by than Marcus had imagined. The trial ended, but the attention didn't. His face had become public property. Magazines wanted interviews. Talk shows wanted appearances. Book publishers sent offers through lawyers he couldn't afford to respond to. Marcus ignored all of it. He just wanted his life back. But his life, the one he'd carefully constructed around night shifts and dinosaur toast and quiet anonymity, no longer existed. The first blow came 2 weeks after the verdict. His supervisor at Sterling Corporate called him into the office, a cramped room on the 3rd floor that Marcus had cleaned hundreds of times but never entered through the front door. "Thompson, we need to talk." Marcus already knew what was coming. He'd seen the looks from the other janitorial staff, heard the whispers that stopped when he entered rooms. "I'm being let go." His supervisor, a tired man named Garcia, who'd always treated Marcus fairly, couldn't meet his eyes. "Corporate's decision. Nothing I could do." They said having you on staff creates a liability. A liability. Reporters keep showing up, asking questions, trying to get into the building. The executives are uncomfortable. Marcus laughed, though nothing was funny. The executives are uncomfortable. That's rich. One of their own tried to murder the CEO, and they're uncomfortable because the janitor who stopped it still works here. Garcia spread his hands helplessly. "I know it's not fair. I told them so. But it's above my pay grade, Marcus. Way above." "What about severance?" 6 months, full pay. And they're not contesting unemployment. Garcia finally looked at him. "It's the best I could negotiate. I'm sorry. You deserved better." Marcus cleaned out his locker that afternoon. 3 years of night shifts, and all he had to show for it was a spare uniform, a photo of Jalen, and a coffee mug Denise had given him for his birthday years ago. He stood in the parking garage where he'd helped Victoria into her car just months earlier. The same concrete walls, the same fluorescent lights, everything the same, except him. His phone buzzed. Victoria. "I heard what happened. I'm so sorry, Marcus. This is my fault." "It's not your fault. It's just how things work." "It's wrong. You saved lives, saved my life, and this is how they repay you?" "Companies don't like complications. I'm a complication now." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Come see me, please. I have an idea." He shouldn't have gone. He knew that even as he drove across town to her penthouse, the same building where they'd watched Crane and Harrison get arrested. Going to Victoria meant getting pulled deeper into her world, a world he didn't belong in. But he went anyway. She met him at the door, looking better than she had in months. The treatment was working. Color had returned to her face. Her movements were steady, confident. "Thank you for coming. she said, leaving him to the living room. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Something stronger?" "I'm fine. What's this idea you mentioned?" Victoria sat across from him, leaning forward with the intensity he'd come to recognize. The CEO was fully back now, firing on all cylinders. Sinclair Corporate is restructuring, part of the fallout from the trial. We're implementing new wellness programs, independent medical oversight, employee health initiatives, things that should have existed years ago. That's good. I want you to run them. Marcus stared at her. Run them? Director of Employee Wellness. You'd oversee health education programs, partner with hospitals to bring screening services on site, develop training for employees to recognize medical emergencies. Victoria's eyes were bright with conviction. Everything you did for me, Marcus. Everything Denise taught you. You could teach others. I'm not qualified. I don't have degrees, certifications. You have something more valuable. You have real experience. You have knowledge that actually saves someone's life. We'll get you the certifications. We'll provide the training. But the foundation, the instinct, the compassion, the ability to see what others miss, that can't be taught. Marcus stood up and walked to the window. Manhattan sprawled below him, all glass and steel and ambition. A world he'd spent his life cleaning up after, never belonging to. This isn't charity? This is good business. Victoria's voice was firm. What happened to me happens in corporate America more than anyone wants to admit. Executives work themselves to death because showing weakness is career suicide. Doctors on retainer tell them what they want to hear instead of what they need to hear. People die, Marcus. Quietly, invisibly, because no one wants to acknowledge they're sick. She stood and joined him at the window. You could change that, not just at my company, everywhere. If we prove this model works, other corporations will follow. Insurance companies will require it. Lives will be saved. And what do I tell Jalen? That his daddy went from pushing a mop to pushing paper in a corner office? You tell him the truth, that his daddy took the knowledge his mommy gave him and used it to help as many people as possible. Victoria's hand brushed his arm, light and tentative. That's what Denise would have wanted, isn't it? Marcus closed his eyes. He could almost hear his wife's voice. You know what I do, baby. I do the right thing, even when it's hard. I need to think about it. Take all the time you need. He went home to find Jalen sitting at the kitchen table, homework spread in front of him, but forgotten. His son's face was troubled in a way that made Marcus's chest tight. Hey, buddy, everything okay? Kids at school are saying stuff. Jalen didn't look up. About you. About the lady you saved. Marcus sat down across from him. What kind of stuff? Tommy Rodriguez said you're famous now, that you're going to be on TV and forget about us regular people. Jalen's lower lip trembled. Are you going to forget about me, Daddy? Marcus pulled his son into his arms, holding him tight against the fear that was breaking his heart. Listen to me, Jalen. Nothing in this world is more important to me than you. Not fame, not money, not any job. You understand? You're my whole world, buddy. That's never going to change. Promise? I promise. Whatever happens, whatever comes next, you and me, we're a team. Always. Jalen sniffled against his shoulder. I miss how things used to be, when you were just a janitor and nobody cared about us. I know, buddy. I miss it too. They sat like that for a long time, father and son, holding on to each other while the world outside demanded things neither of them had asked for. That night, Marcus dreamed of Denise. She was sitting at the kitchen table, the way she always have after her shifts, quizzing him on symptoms and protocols. But this time, she wasn't asking questions. She was just looking at him with that knowing smile that always made him feel both exposed and understood. You're scared, she said. Terrified. Of what? Of changing. of losing who I am, of becoming someone Jalen doesn't recognize. Denise reached across the table and took his hands. Her touch felt real, warm, alive. Baby, you've already changed. The moment you pushed open that door, you became someone new. The question isn't whether you're going to change. It's whether you're going to choose how you change, or let other people choose for you. What if I choose wrong? Then you learn. You adjust. You keep going. She squeezed his hands. That's what I did every day in that hospital. Made choices, some right, some wrong. The important thing was that I kept making them. I wish you were here to help me. I am here, Marcus. I'm in everything you know, everything you do, everything you teach our son. Her smile softened. You're not alone, baby. You never were. He woke up with tears on his face and a clarity he hadn't felt in months. The next morning, he called Victoria. I'll take the job, but I have conditions. Name them. I work reasonable hours. I'm home for dinner with Jalen every night. No galas, no press appearances, no corporate theater that takes me away from my son. Done. And I want to start a foundation. The Denise Thompson Foundation. Free stroke education for working-class communities. The people who can't afford fancy doctors and don't have time for wellness retreats. Victoria was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. That's beautiful, Marcus. Yes, absolutely yes. I'll fund the startup costs myself. It's not charity, it's an investment in the legacy of an extraordinary woman who taught an extraordinary man to save lives. She laughed softly. We're going to change things, Marcus. Really change them. He wanted to believe her. Part of him did. But another part, the part that had learned to be invisible, to expect nothing, to protect himself from disappointment, that part remained wary. The job was harder than Marcus had expected. Not the work itself, that came naturally. He knew how to talk to people, how to explain medical concepts in simple terms, how to make employees feel comfortable discussing their health. The janitor, who used to be invisible, was surprisingly good at making others feel seen. But the corporate world was exhausting in ways he hadn't anticipated. Meetings that could have been emails that could have been left unsent. The constant political maneuvering, the reading of tea leaves, the awareness that every interaction was being evaluated and judged. Victoria tried to shield him from the worst of it. She'd pulled him into her orbit, and with that came a certain protection. No one wanted to antagonize the CEO's pet project. But Marcus could feel the resentment. From executives who thought he was unqualified. From middle managers who resented his direct line to the top. From everyone who looked at him and saw a janitor playing dress-up in a world he didn't belong in. Ignore them, Victoria told him during one of their weekly check-ins. They're threatened because you represent something they can't buy or fake. You have authenticity. That's rare in this building. Authenticity doesn't help me in budget meetings. No, but I do, she smiled. Let them underestimate you, Marcus. That's always been your greatest advantage. The foundation launched in the spring. The Denise Thompson Foundation for Stroke Awareness. Marcus stood at the podium during the press conference, looking out at a room full of journalists and cameras, and talked about his wife. He talked about her dedication to patients who couldn't afford private care, about her belief that medical knowledge belonged to everyone, about the kitchen table quizzes that had saved Victoria Sinclair's life. My wife used to say that everyone deserves to be treated like a human being first, Marcus said, his voice steady, despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Not as a patient, not as a customer, not as a line item on a budget. A human being. That's what this foundation is about. Seeing people, really seeing them, and giving them the tools to take care of themselves and each other. After the speech, Victoria found him backstage. Her eyes were red. "That was beautiful," she said. "Denise would have been proud." "I hope so." "I know so." Victoria hesitated, then reached for his hand. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." His heart rate spiked. "What is it?" "The board is promoting me. Global operations. It means more travel, more responsibility, more time away." She met his eyes. "And it means I need to step back from the day-to-day involvement with your programs." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not surprise, he'd seen this coming. Victoria Sinclair wasn't built to stand still. She was a force of nature, always moving, always conquering new territory. "That's great news," he said. "You've earned it." "Have I?" Her laugh was brittle. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm running toward success or running away from everything else." "Maybe both. Maybe that's okay." They stood in silence for a moment, the noise of the reception filtering through the walls. "I'm going to miss this," Victoria said quietly. "Whatever this is." "Victoria, I know we never defined it. I know there are 1,000 reasons why it couldn't work. The gap between our worlds, the media attention, Jalen's stability." She pulled her hand back. "I'm not asking for anything, Marcus. I just wanted you to know that these past months, they've meant something to me. Something real." Marcus thought about all the Sunday mornings at his kitchen table. The dinosaur toast. The way she laughed at Jalen's jokes. The way she'd learned to be human again in the presence of an 8-year-old's unconditional acceptance. "They've meant something to me too," he said. Victoria nodded slowly, composing herself with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned to hide emotions in boardrooms and press conferences. "The foundation will continue. The programs will continue. Everything we built. It's bigger than either of us now." She straightened her shoulders. "Take care of yourself, Marcus. Take care of that beautiful boy." "You too, Victoria." She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "You know, when I was lying in that conference room, unable to feel my own arm, convinced I was going to die alone, surrounded by furniture worth more than most people's houses, the only thing I could think about was how empty it all was. The money, the power, the magazine covers. None of it mattered." She looked back at him over her shoulder. "Then you pushed open that door, and suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. A stranger saw me, really saw me, when everyone else had looked right through me for years." Her voice cracked slightly. "That's the most valuable thing anyone's ever given me, Marcus. I hope you know that." Then she was gone. Marcus stood in the empty backstage area for a long time, processing everything she'd said, everything she hadn't said, everything that hung in the silence between them like a question that would never be answered. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson. "Jalen asking when you're coming home. Made you a card." Marcus smiled, despite the ache in his chest. Whatever complicated feelings existed between him and Victoria, one thing remained simple and certain. His son needed him. He typed back, "On my way. Tell him Daddy's bringing ice cream." The months that followed were a strange mixture of growth and loss. The foundation flourished. Marcus trained hundreds of people in stroke recognition. The programs he developed were adopted by other corporations. Insurance companies started requiring health education as part of executive packages. He was making a difference. Real, measurable, tangible difference. But Victoria's absence left a hole he hadn't expected. She kept her word about stepping back. No more Sunday breakfasts. No more texts about sunsets or funny articles. Just occasional formal communications about foundation business. Always through assistance. Always professional. Jalen noticed. "Daddy, where's the flower lady?" "The flower lady?" "Ms. Victoria. She always brought flowers." Jalen looked up from his Lego dinosaur. "Did she forget about us?" "No, buddy. She's just very busy with her job. Important people have important things to do." More important than dinosaur toast? Marcus pulled his son close. Nothing's more important than dinosaur toast. But the question haunted him. Had Victoria forgotten? Or was she, like him, trying to protect herself from wanting something that couldn't work? The answer came 6 months later. Marcus was in his office at Sinclair Tower, still surreal, having an office in the building he used to clean, when his assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Thompson, there's a delivery for you." A courier entered, carrying a flat package wrapped in brown paper. No return address, no card. Marcus unwrapped it carefully, and his breath caught. It was a painting. Amateur, but deeply felt. The image showed him and Jalen at the kitchen table, dinosaur-shaped toast between them, morning light streaming through the window. The perspective was from outside, looking in, the view of someone watching through glass. On the back, in Victoria's careful handwriting, were 3 words: "What I see." Marcus stared at the painting for a long time. This wasn't a CEO communicating through assistants. This was Victoria. The woman who'd sat at his kitchen table. The woman who'd learned to laugh again. The woman who'd found something human in a world that had tried to strip her humanity away. He thought about calling her, thought about showing up at her office, demanding to know what this meant, where they stood, what came next. But he didn't. Because some things didn't need to be defined to be real. Some connections existed in the spaces between words, between worlds, between what was possible and what was necessary. Instead, Marcus hung the painting in his office where he could see it every day. A reminder that even the most powerful people needed to be seen. That even the most invisible people could matter. That everyone, regardless of their station, deserved to be treated like a human being first. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Thompson, this is the White House calling. The President would like to invite you to receive the Presidential Citizens Medal for your service in healthcare advocacy." Marcus looked at the painting, at his son's face captured in amateur brushstrokes, at the morning light Victoria had remembered so perfectly. "Mr. Thompson, are you there?" "Yes," he said slowly. "I'm here." Life had taken him from pushing a cleaning cart to standing in his own office, fielding calls from the White House. Had taken him from invisible to undeniable. Had taken him from surviving to thriving in ways he'd never imagined possible. And through it all, the most important things remained unchanged. His love for his son, his commitment to Denise's legacy, his belief that knowledge was meant to be shared, not hoarded. Everything else was just detail. "Tell the President I'd be honored," Marcus said. He hung up the phone, looked at Victoria's painting one more time, and went home to make dinosaur toast for Jalen. Because some things, the most important things, were worth protecting, no matter what else changed. The Presidential Citizens Medal ceremony took place on a Tuesday morning in late October. Marcus stood in the East Room of the White House, surrounded by other honorees, a firefighter from California who'd saved 14 children from a school bus, a nurse from Texas who'd organized free clinics in underserved communities, a teenager from Ohio who'd developed a water purification system for developing nations, and him, Marcus Thompson, former janitor, widower, single father. The company still felt surreal, even after everything. Jalen sat in the front row, wearing the suit Victoria had sent for the occasion. Expensive, perfectly tailored, with a small dinosaur pin on the lapel that made Marcus smile every time he saw it. Mrs. Patterson sat beside him, beaming with the pride of someone who'd watched the story unfold from the beginning. "Marcus Thompson," the president read from the citation, "for extraordinary dedication to public health education and for actions that not only saved a life, but exposed systemic failures in corporate healthcare. Mr. Thompson's courage, compassion, and commitment to sharing medical knowledge exemplify the best of American citizenship. The medal was heavier than Marcus expected. Gold, with an eagle and 13 stars hanging from a blue ribbon. He held it in his hands and thought about all the invisible hours that had led to this moment. The night shifts, the kitchen table quizzes, the door he'd almost walked past. Denise should be here, he thought. This belongs to her as much as me. After the ceremony, a reception in the state dining room, Marcus found himself shaking hands with senators, cabinet members, people whose faces he recognized from television. Everyone wanted to meet the janitor who'd saved the CEO. Jalen tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, can we go home now? This suit is itchy." Marcus laughed, the tension breaking. "Soon, buddy. Just a few more handshakes." "But these people are boring. They keep asking me the same questions. How does it feel to have a hero for a father?" "I told them you're not a hero. You're just Daddy." A woman nearby overheard and chuckled. Marcus turned to apologize and found himself face to face with Victoria Sinclair. She looked different, more relaxed. The corporate armor was still there, but softened somehow. Her eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "He's right, you know," Victoria said. "You're not a hero. Heroes are characters in stories. You're something better. You're real." "Victoria," Marcus's voice caught. "I didn't know you'd be here. I wasn't going to come. Told myself it would be easier to watch from a distance, the way I've been watching for months." She glanced at Jalen, who was studying her with serious brown eyes. "But then I realized I was being a coward. And I've had enough of being a coward." "You're the flower lady," Jalen said suddenly. "You stopped bringing flowers." Victoria crouched down to his level, the way she had the first time they'd met in Marcus's cramped Bronx apartment. "I did stop," she admitted. "I thought it would be easier for everyone if I stayed away. But I was wrong. I missed you, Jalen. I missed the dinosaur toast. Daddy makes it every Sunday. You could come back." Victoria looked up at Marcus, a question in her eyes. "Jalen," Marcus said carefully, "why don't you go get some of those cookies from the dessert table? Mrs. Patterson will help you." His son, with the intuition children sometimes possess, understood he was being dismissed for adult conversation. He took Mrs. Patterson's hand and headed toward the refreshments, glancing back once over his shoulder. "He's grown so much," Victoria said softly. "I can't believe it's been a year." "A year and 2 months. But who's counting?" "I am, apparently." She straightened, smoothing her dress. "Marcus, I owe you an explanation. For the distance, the silence, the painting without a conversation." "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do. I owed you honesty, and instead I gave you absence." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "I was scared. Not of you, never of you, but of what you represented. The possibility of something real in a life I'd built on performance and control." "And now?" "Now I've spent a year traveling the world, running from one success to another, and discovering that none of it fills the space that appeared when I stopped having Sunday breakfast with you and Jalen." Marcus absorbed her words slowly. A year of silence. A year of wondering. A year of telling himself that whatever they'd had was better left undefined. "The painting," he said. "What I see. What did you mean?" Victoria's eyes glistened. "I meant that when I look at you and Jalen, I see everything I told myself I didn't need. Family. Connection. A home that's built on love instead of leverage." She paused. "I see what I want, Marcus. What I've wanted since you pushed open that conference room door." "Victoria, our worlds are different. The gap is irrelevant." Her voice sharpened with the conviction that had built a billion-dollar empire. "I've spent my whole life believing that success meant climbing higher, accumulating more, proving something to people who aren't even alive to see it. But that night in the conference room, when I couldn't feel my own arm and thought I was going to die, none of that mattered. She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, the same scent from their Sunday mornings. What mattered was that a stranger cared enough to help. What mattered was being seen. What mattered was connection. Human connection. Her hand found his. "You gave me that, Marcus. You and Jalen. And I walked away from it because I was afraid." Afraid of what? Of wanting something I couldn't control. Of needing someone who might leave. Of building a life that could be lost. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Denise died, and you kept going. You kept loving, kept caring, kept opening doors for people who needed help." How do you do that? How do you risk loss again after losing everything? Marcus thought about the question. Thought about the 2 years since Denise's death. The grief that had nearly drowned him. The slow, painful process of learning to breathe again. "I don't have a choice," he said finally. "Jalen needs me to keep going. The work needs me to keep going. And Denise," his voice cracked, "Denise would never forgive me if I closed myself off. She spent her whole life opening doors, teaching, healing, connecting. If I stopped doing the same, I'd be betraying everything she believed in. Even if it means getting hurt again? Especially then." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Love isn't supposed to be safe, Victoria. It's supposed to be worth the risk." They stood in the state dining room, surrounded by senators and secretaries and the elaborate machinery of power, holding hands like teenagers at a school dance. "I don't know how to do this," Victoria admitted. "I don't know how to be part of a family. I've always been alone. Even when I was married, I was alone. Then we figure it out together, day by day, Sunday by Sunday." "What about Jalen? I won't come back into his life just to disappear again. He deserves stability." "Then don't disappear." Marcus's voice was firm. "Stay. Not because of obligation or gratitude or guilt. Stay because you want to. Because this, whatever this is, matters enough to fight for." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. The noise of the reception faded around them, the important people and important conversations becoming irrelevant background. "When I was in the hospital after the first stroke," she said slowly, "Dr. Williams asked me who I wanted her to contact. Emergency contact. Next of kin. I couldn't think of anyone. I have a brother I haven't spoken to in 15 years. Parents who died decades ago. Colleagues who would turn my medical crisis into a business opportunity." She met his eyes. "You were the only person I wanted there. A man I'd met hours earlier. A janitor who saw me when everyone else looked through me." "Victoria, I'm not asking you to save me again, Marcus. I'm asking you to let me try to be part of something real. Something that matters more than stock prices and board meetings." Her grip on his hand tightened. "I'm asking for a chance. That's all. Just a chance." Across the room, Jalen was showing Mrs. Patterson how to stack cookies into a tower. He glanced toward his father, caught his eye, and waved. A small, innocent gesture that carried the weight of everything Marcus had been fighting for. "Come to dinner," Marcus said. "Tonight. Nothing fancy. Just dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and whatever vegetables I can convince Jalen to eat." Victoria laughed. A real laugh, surprised and delighted. "Dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets?" "Family tradition. Take it or leave it." "I'll take it." Her smile transformed her face, making her look younger, softer, more human. "I'll take all of it." The transition wasn't smooth. Nothing worth having ever is. Victoria struggled with the rhythms of ordinary life, She'd spent decades in a world of assistants and schedules and controlled environments. Marcus's Bronx apartment, with its second-hand furniture and crayon-decorated refrigerator, was foreign territory. But she learned. She learned that Sunday breakfast started at 8 a.m. sharp, not because of any schedule, but because Jalen was hungry. She learned that dinosaur toast required specific cutting techniques that Marcus had perfected over years of practice. She learned that conversations with a 9-year-old could veer from paleontology to pizza toppings to profound questions about life and death without warning. "Ms. Victoria?" Jalen asked one Sunday morning. "Do you think my mommy can see us from heaven?" Victoria froze, a piece of toast halfway to her mouth. She looked at Marcus, uncertain. "Your daddy's mentioned that she's watching over you," Victoria said carefully. "What do you think?" Jalen considered this with the seriousness of a philosopher. "I think she can. Sometimes I feel like she's standing right behind me, especially when I do something good. Like when I helped Tommy Rodriguez with his math homework, even though he said mean things about Daddy. That was very kind of you." "Mommy was kind. Daddy says she helps sick people feel better, like what Daddy does now." Jalen looked at Victoria with those serious brown eyes. "Do you think she likes you?" Victoria's breath caught. I hope so, Jalen. I hope she knows how much I care about you and your daddy." "I think she does," Jalen nodded with the certainty of childhood. "I think that's why she sent you, to help us be happy again." Marcus watched the exchange from across the table, his heart swelling with an emotion too complex to name. Grief and joy intertwined, the past and present coexisting. Denise's absence and Victoria's presence somehow fitting together like puzzle pieces he hadn't known were meant to connect. That night, after Jalen was asleep, Victoria found Marcus on the fire escape, looking out at the city lights. "He's remarkable," she said, settling beside him. "Jalen, the way he thinks about things. He gets it from his mother." Denise saw the world clearly, cut through all the noise to what actually mattered. "He said she sent me." Victoria's voice was soft. "To help you be happy again." Kids believe what they need to believe. Do you believe it? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The city hummed around them, car horns and distant sirens, and the constant murmur of millions of lives being lived. "I believe Denise wanted me to be happy. I believe she'd want Jalen to have people who love him." He turned to face Victoria. "I believe that whatever brought you into that conference room at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night, luck, fate, something else, I'm grateful for it. Even with everything that's happened, the media attention, losing your job, having your life turned upside down, even with all of it." Marcus reached for her hand. "Before that night, I was surviving, going through the motions, being a good father because that's what Jalen needed, but not really living. You changed that. You reminded me that life can still surprise you, can still offer something unexpected and beautiful." Victoria intertwined her fingers with his. "I've never been called unexpected and beautiful before." "Get used to it." She laughed, and the sound echoed off the fire escape, carried away by the night wind. "I have to tell you something," she said. "About the company, about what's happening next." "What do you mean?" "I'm stepping down as CEO." Marcus stared at her. "What?" "Victoria, you built that company. It's your life's work." "Exactly. It was my life's work. Past tense." Victoria's expression was calm, resolved. "The trial, the conspiracy, nearly dying twice, it changed my perspective. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in boardrooms fighting battles that don't matter." "What do you want?" "I want to run the foundation, the Denise Thompson Foundation, full-time, hands-on." She squeezed his hand. "I want to honor the woman who made all of this possible, who taught you to see what others missed, who's the reason I'm alive today." Marcus's eyes burned. "Victoria, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. It's the first thing I've wanted, really wanted, in years." Her voice grew thick with emotion. "Let me do this, Marcus. Let me be part of the legacy. Let me help spread the knowledge that saved my life." He couldn't speak, could only nod, pulling her close, holding her, while the city lived and breathed around them. 2 years later, the Denise Thompson Foundation had trained over 50,000 people in stroke recognition. The programs had spread to 23 states, partnering with hospitals, corporations, and community centers to bring medical education to people who'd never had access to it before. Lives were being saved, not dramatically, not through heroic interventions, but quietly, persistently, through knowledge shared and symptoms recognized. Marcus stood at the podium of the Foundation's annual gala, looking out at a room full of supporters, survivors, and believers. Jalen sat in the front row, now 11 years old, wearing a suit and tie and the same dinosaur pin from the White House ceremony. Beside him sat Victoria, her hand resting on his shoulder. "5 years ago," Marcus began, "I was pushing a cleaning cart through a corporate building, invisible to everyone around me. I was grieving my wife, raising my son alone, just trying to survive until the next paycheck." He paused, gathering himself. "Then I pushed open a door, not because I was brave, not because I was looking for recognition, but because I heard someone in trouble, and I couldn't walk away. My wife had taught me the symptoms of a stroke. More importantly, she taught me that everyone deserves help when they need it. That medical knowledge isn't just for doctors, it's for all of us." The room was silent. Hundreds of faces, all watching. The woman I found in that conference room became someone I never expected. A partner, a friend, a co-conspirator in this crazy mission to teach the world what Denise Thompson taught me at her kitchen table. Marcus smiled at Victoria. "She's sitting right there, probably wishing I'd hurry up so we can get to the dinner portion of the evening." Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. "But before we eat, I want to share something. Not statistics, though we have plenty of those. Not success stories, though we have hundreds. I want to share a truth that took me a long time to understand." Marcus gripped the podium, steadying himself. "We spend our lives building walls, between us and them, between rich and poor, between the people who matter and the people we don't see. We tell ourselves these walls keep us safe, keep us in our proper place, keep the world orderly and manageable." His voice strengthened. "But walls don't keep us safe. They keep us isolated. They keep us from seeing each other clearly. They keep us from recognizing that the person on the other side, the janitor, the CEO, the stranger on the street, is just as human as we are, just as afraid, just as desperate for connection." He found Jalen's eyes in the crowd. "My son told me once that his mother sent Victoria to help us be happy again. I used to think that was just a child's way of making sense of loss. But maybe he was right. Maybe Denise did send her. Not through supernatural intervention, but through the knowledge she passed on, the values she instilled, the simple revolutionary belief that we're supposed to take care of each other." Marcus stepped back from the podium. "That's what the Denise Thompson Foundation is about. Not just stroke education, not just medical training. It's about tearing down the walls that separate us. It's about seeing each other clearly. It's about pushing open doors, literal and figurative, when someone on the other side needs help." He raised his glass. "To Denise, who taught me everything worth knowing. And to everyone in this room who's carrying her mission forward. May we never stop opening doors." The room rose to its feet. Applause thundered. But Marcus wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at Jalen, who was crying and smiling at the same time. At Victoria, who was mouthing, "I love you," across the distance. At the empty chair beside them, where he'd placed Denise's photograph, a tradition they'd maintained at every foundation event. This was his family now. Complicated, unconventional, built from loss and rebuilt through courage, but real, deeply, undeniably real. After the gala, Marcus found himself alone on the venue's terrace, looking out at the city. Different city than his Bronx apartment. Different view, but the same stars overhead, the same moon, the same world that kept spinning regardless of human drama. Victoria joined him, kicking off her heels with a sigh of relief. "Great speech," she said. "I meant every word." "I know. That's what made it great." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "Your wife would have loved tonight." She would have. She would have been running around making sure everyone was comfortable. Probably would have reorganized the entire buffet because the vegetarian options weren't prominent enough. Victoria laughed. "She sounds amazing." She was. Marcus wrapped his arm around her. "And so are you. Different, but equally amazing." "I'm still learning. The whole family thing?" "The whole domesticity thing. You're doing great. Jalen adores you. Jalen adores anyone who'll listen to his dinosaur theories for more than 5 minutes. True, but he specifically adores you." Marcus turned to face her. "And so do I, for what it's worth." Victoria looked up at him, her eyes bright in the moonlight. "It's worth everything, Marcus. Everything I have." "Then we're even." They stood together in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, and somehow built something that worked. "Hey," Victoria said suddenly, "I never asked you. That night in the conference room, before you pushed open the door, what were you thinking?" Marcus considered the question. 5 years of distance, but he remembered the moment like it was yesterday. "I was thinking that I was 13 minutes ahead of schedule. That if I kept moving, I could finish the floor early and catch an extra hour of sleep before Jalen woke up." So practical. That's who I was. Practical, efficient, invisible. He paused. "Then I heard you struggling to breathe, and I thought about Denise, about all the times she'd described stroke symptoms to me, made me repeat them back until I could recite them in my sleep, about her belief that knowledge was meant to be shared. And I thought, if I walk away from this door, I betray everything she taught me. So I pushed it open." He smiled. "I didn't know I was changing my life. I just knew I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to help." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she reached up and touched his face, turning him toward her. "Marcus Thompson, you are the best man I've ever known. And I don't say that because you saved my life, though you did. I say it because every single day you choose to be good. You choose to help. You choose to open doors when most people would walk past." "Victoria, let me finish." Her voice was fierce with conviction. "I've met presidents and billionaires, and people who think they're important because the world tells them they are. None of them compare to you. Not even close." She kissed him then, soft and certain, a promise sealed under stars. When they pulled apart, Marcus saw Jalen watching from the doorway, grinning the mischievous grin of a child who'd witnessed something romantic and found it equal parts gross and wonderful. "Are you guys done being mushy?" Jalen called. "They're serving cake, and Mrs. Patterson says I can only have one piece unless you say otherwise." Marcus laughed, the sound rising into the night. "Tell Mrs. Patterson 2 pieces is fine. It's a special occasion." Jalen pumped his fist in victory and disappeared back inside. Victoria took Marcus's hand, Ready to go back in? He looked at the woman beside him, at the venue behind them filled with people celebrating the legacy of his late wife, at the future stretching ahead, uncertain but full of promise. "Yeah," he said, "I'm ready." They walked back inside together, hand in hand, to the family they'd built from fragments and the future they'd earned through courage. 5 years ago, Marcus Thompson had been invisible. A janitor pushing a cart through empty hallways. A widower raising a son alone. A man surviving day by day, expecting nothing, asking for nothing. Then he'd pushed open a door, and everything changed. Not because fate was kind, not because the universe owed him anything, but because he'd made a choice. A simple, human choice to help someone who needed help. That choice had led to this moment, to the foundation carrying Denise's name, to the woman holding his hand, to the son who'd grown up watching his father be brave. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for their moment, waiting for permission, waiting for the right circumstances. Marcus Thompson had learned something different. The moment doesn't come to you. You create it. One open door at a time. The end.